Osiris.
This podcast is in the Loop, the Legion of Osiris podcasts. Osiris is creating a community that connects people like you with live experiences and podcasts about artists and topics you love. Get in the loop at osirispod.com.
Support for this podcast comes from Zuri Food, all natural, all human-grade dog food, offering 4 different diets to optimize nutrition for your pup, and now 2 different kinds of dog treats as well. Visit www.zurifood.com today to order yours, because pups are people too.
Hey everybody, welcome to GuitarCast, episode 28. This is your host, Andy Keithley. Today's guest is Chelsea Clark. Chelsea owns and operates a guitar repair shop here in Los Angeles called Guitars and Caffeine. Today's Osiris podcast profile is the newest addition to the Osiris network. It's the Relics Audio Hour. Relics is a magazine and an online publication that's all the best music news, live music. They're also Osiris media partner. And their first episode went up just recently. And in it, they profile the recent Leon Bridges album and tour, and they talk a little bit about Bob Weir and Phil Lesh's tour earlier this year, and play a lot of clips and really good sounding audio quality stuff. So check out the Relics Audio Hour on whatever podcast app you're using, and visit osirispod.com for a full list of all the other great podcasts in the Osiris Podcast Network. Leave a rating and a review for GuitarCast on Apple Podcasts. You can do it right from your app, and it only takes a second. And follow GuitarCast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at GuitarCastPod. This episode of GuitarCast is brought to you by Zuri Food. Fresh, all-natural, all-human-grade dog food and dog treats. If you've got a dog, visit zurifood.com today, because pups are people too. Here comes GuitarCast episode 28 with guitar repairer Chelsea Clark. All right. Okay, so we're here. Welcome to GuitarCast, everybody. We're here with Chelsea Clark.
Yes, hi.
Chelsea, we're in your shop.
My house shop.
Your house shop. And we were just talking about this a second ago, about what exactly it is that you do or what your title would be. It's kind of ambiguous because...
I like to go by badass. No.
Professional badass, of course.
The term luthier is what's been... Should I turn that off?
It'll be in there. It'll sound like shop noises, like there's some machine, you know.
I'm so sorry.
Do you watch Westworld at all? You know that show,
Yes,
Westworld?
yes.
You know the opening? They're like these 3D printers building the bodies.
Building
and
the
stuff.
bodies, yeah.
That's what people might hear, you know.
So just say we're 3D printing.
With 3D printing incredible guitars.
So a lot of people use the term luthier, and that traditionally is supposed to describe a lute builder or guitar builder these days.
That's where the lute comes from. I did not know that.
That's the history behind guitars. And of course there are other guitar-like stringed instruments from around the world, but that's the luthier term. Now we say luthier in U.S., but overseas, you know, it's pronounced luthier.
Okay. All right.
So,
also new to me, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I to me, it's a little uncomfortable and pretentious. Not that if I call my friends a luthier or hear somebody else use it, I think it's great and I know exactly what they do. I just personally, I like to just be called a repairer.
Yeah.
I repair things.
And just from looking at your story on your website, it sounds like you're from Ohio.
I am. Southeastern Ohio.
Southeastern Ohio.
Yeah,
cool.
Athens, Ohio. Athens is the hometown of Ohio University. Yeah.
Is that the green one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Green and white Bobcats.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I got some friends who went there.
Oh, there you go.
And I grew up not too far from there in Virginia, in Charlottesville.
Okay, cool.
So I spent some time in Ohio.
Nice. It's beautiful. We grew up in a beautiful area of America.
You still have family there?
I do,
Yeah.
and it's always a blessing to go visit. Stu Mac is also located there.
Okay.
So yeah.
I've ordered parts from them, like tuners and other various guitar parts. I've been a player my whole life, and I really don't know the first thing about how a guitar is built or real repairs. I mean, I can make some,
Are you like, do you set up your own guitars?
I have attempted, but I don't know what I'm doing. So like,
okay.
I shouldn't be if I am, but how did you play at one point, and that's kind of how you?
How I started. So no, I attempted to start to play. I bought this $90 Fender acoustic when I was 16 because I was, crushing on a guy that played guitar, and I thought if I got this guitar, the guys would really like me. Same kind of thing.
Did it have like the Fender like Stratocaster headstock? Like
no, it wasn't. Was at the Sonoma? No, it wasn't. It was it was just a plain Dreadnought. And it came, the kit that had the little tuner and the bag.
Strap or something like that.
Yeah, and the strap, and it might have had a chord book too. Now, unfortunately, before I got a chance to learn how to play, an acquaintance of mine borrowed it, and when I got it back, the headstock was broken.
Yeah, okay.
So I kept it around because I knew it could be fixed. I just didn't know how to do it. And lo and behold, the following summer, I got a job fixing up Dan Erlewine's house. I would do these odds and ends jobs around town, hanging cabinets, doors, painting. And I worked for him. And so I walked into his shop one day and I see all these guitars. And it's an amazing, woodworking shop. And I just mentioned to him, hey, do you mind trading some hours for this broken guitar? Well, I'm sure, an $80, $90 Fender acoustic Dreadnought with a broken headstock, not quite worth it. So at the time, I thought he kind of brushed me off, and I did the work. I ended up changing a coal room in his basement into a spray booth. So dry loxing everything and hanging up cabinets and installing a fan, So when the job was done, he handed me, it was a Friday, and he handed me a couple books. It was a bag with books and a few DVDs. And he said, come back on Monday and I'll have your check. But during the weekend, if you have some time, check out this stuff. And I'll talk to you about your guitar on Monday. So I kind of put it off all weekend, and then on Sunday, I had a few moments, and I popped in a DVD, and it was him. And I felt like such an idiot, like such a jerk.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, here I was working with somebody who has DVDs and books, and I had no idea, and I'm bringing him an $80 acoustic with a broken headstock. So on Monday when I showed up, he paid me, and he also had a bench set up for me, and basically said, if you have any questions, I'll be over here, but fix your guitar.
Wow. And
so that was my first repair. And after that, I was kind of hooked because it was a hands-on, creative thing where I could work with wood, but there's a lot of science integrated into it. And so I fell in love, I think, with the science.
Cool. So from there, where did your path take you after that happened?
So So after that, so I had already enrolled in beauty school.
Okay.
And the deposit was a lot of money. It was, I think, all of beauty school cost like $9,000 or something, and I had already put down a deposit of like $2,000.
Yeah.
And so I went to beauty school in Columbus, Ohio, which is about, at the time, it's about an hour and 15 minutes away because of a new highway.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, it was about 2 hours away. So on the weekends, I would drive down. So I would go to beauty school during the day, wait tables at night, and then on the weekends, I'd come down and sweep shop at Dan's, and visit my family. And so I did that for about 8 months. Almost dropped out of beauty school.
Were you studying like hair and makeup?
Yeah, well, just cutting hair, coloring hair. I wanted to cut mohawks.
I got
like
one.
That was my only goal.
Hope you want a mohawk.
I ended up being all right at other cuts. So, but yeah, that was I wanted to be a punk stylist. I don't know. It paid my bills for a little while, though. I will say, for about 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I get out of beauty school. And I come back down to Athens and realize after a couple months that cutting hair is fun, but it's not, to me, it was a form of artistry, as hair is kind of a fabric.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's hair, because of the movement and the weight, it kind of lays differently.
Sure.
And so I really enjoyed it. It was like sculpting, kind of. But the culture around the everyday, stylist, it wasn't anything that appealed to me.
Yeah.
I like wearing, fancy clothes and dressing up, but I don't really think that defines me.
Sure.
And I don't think that should define anybody else. So I went back to school, and while I was back in school, I cut hair sometimes, but then I would also be repairing guitars. Mm-hmm. And a lot of for the early part of my, I don't know if it was a career yet, but when I was in Athens, I would mostly sweep up in hand tools. There wasn't a lot of, I would repair friends' guitars, or if there was a beater that somebody couldn't, afford a repair, then I would repair those guitars.
Yeah.
So I wasn't working on pre-war Martins.
Right.
That wasn't. So the first probably 5 years of getting into guitar repair, I was just sweeping up shop, learning about tools and the anatomy of a guitar and the science behind the chemicals. Handing tools, being present, watching Dan work and watching my other colleagues work, like Eric Coleman.
You were apprenticing, essentially.
I was a fly on the wall. Yeah. And those were great years. I really enjoy learning, so those were great years. At some point, Guitar Player magazine called up Dan, and Dan had done a few do-it-yourself articles in Guitar Player magazine in the 80s. And at that time, there was 5 of us working in Dan's shop. And so he integrated us into those new articles, and that we were called the Mod Squad. And that was fun. I started learning a lot because Dan kind of pushed me to learn more. There was a lot more finish work I started doing at that point. I loved finish touch-up. I loved detailing and restoring old vintage things, cleaning, basically. But along with that, which was such a cool experience and opportunity, those articles ran, I think, for 3 years. There was a lot of it was kind of my first view of the outside world looking at me, being a guitar repairer. And it wasn't it wasn't what I thought I looked like. It was very sexist and very ageist.
The industry of guitar repairing?
Yeah, well, and not the industry, but also just kind of the culture built up around it.
The way that you were portrayed in...
Yeah, well, no, not how I was portrayed in the magazines, just how everybody thought of me. So, for example, I would meet a guy, right? And we'd, have the discussion, oh, what do you do? What do you do? And I'd start talking about guitar repair. And then right afterwards, it would just be this crank out of gear questions trying to discredit me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've never been a gearhead, right? And so I just got really quiet about talking. That really took away my voice for a long, long time.
Yeah. That's shitty.
Yeah, it is. But because of Dan and the team, it was never part of the shop. That was never a part of the shop culture. So, so it was only on the outside. So for a long time, I was dating this guy in Chicago, and we would go out, and he's in a band, so we would meet all these people. And I would tell him, I'd be like, please don't mention to anybody that I repair guitars or that I'm in Guitar Player Magazine.
Hey, this is Chris Pandolfi from the infamous String Dusters, and this podcast is part of the Osiris podcast family. Osiris is a growing community of music and culture podcasts connecting music fans with conversation, commentary, and music. Osiris works in partnership with Relics. Check them out for all kinds of new music, news, and information.
You're with Dan Irwine?
So I'm with Dan, and at that time I was back in college at Ohio University, getting a degree in anthropology that took 3 years. I then moved to New York City to shave mohawks.
A lot of customers there.
And you know what? I actually, for that year that I was in New York City, I maybe repaired a handful of guitars, maybe a half dozen guitars.
Now, at this point, did you have your own tools, and did you have...
Yeah.
Okay.
I always traveled with tools. I kind of got that from my parents. I grew up, they always flipped the houses that we lived in. So tools to me were just kind of natural, right? And I've always had a pair of steel-toe boots, and that's just...
Sure.
Yeah. So I had tools, and I would do that on the side. But really, I was there cutting hair, and I didn't like the culture of New York, probably mostly because I was, I didn't have a pot to piss in. It's a very expensive city.
I hear that. Okay, everybody loves New York, right? You hear it. Just, and I've spent plenty of time in New York. I've never lived there, but I've spent a lot of time there. And it's like, for some reason, it's like sacrilege for people to say, like, I just don't love the city of New York.
Yeah.
In the way that people talk about it.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like, it's cool, I guess, to visit there, but like, if you don't have a budget and you're there, it's a brutal place to be. It's like, it's rough. I mean, it can be really rough. So
it's so true. I remember paying $700 for a room, which was probably at one point a pantry or a side closet of an apartment. And it was bad. So needless to say, I didn't stay there for very long. I got an offer to from Actors Theater to build props in Louisville, Kentucky, at the theater. In college, I had built props. And my mom growing up, my mom was a director of sorts. And so I was kind of always backstage building things, right? And so when that opportunity came, I thought that it would be a really good exit point. So I went down to Louisville, Kentucky. Never really had a desire to go there before. Just, an opportunity to get the hell out. When I was there, like the second day, I met the love of my life, who I'm still with. and he is. I always said I'd never date a guitarist, and he's a guitarist, yeah.
Yep.
And that was 8 years ago, so I can't be back because we're still together. But he started taking me around to the local music stores,
In Louisville.
Yeah, in Louisville. And one of the music stores we visited was called Willis Music, and they had a few locations, I think, in the tri-state area. At that time, they might only have 1 or 2 locations now. And the manager recognized me from Guitar Player magazine.
Oh, wow.
From years and years before, right? I mean, just a guitar geek, right?
Cool.
And offered me a job on the spot. And at that point, I hadn't really, I didn't think that I would ever be taken seriously or ever given the opportunity to repair guitars for a living. That just with the culture surrounding the articles and everything, I just thought that it wasn't an option. So when that happened, I said, well, sure, fuck it, let's see if this works. And it did. It worked for about a year. I ended up managing both of the locations with the shops, which isn't much to say. There was maybe 1 or 2 other guys doing that. And then I'm talking to Dan, probably every week with a question I have or, just to bounce ideas off of somebody. And he said that Gibson's Restoration Shop, which at the time was managed by Todd Money, was looking for somebody with my skills.
In Nashville.
Right. So he hooked me up with Todd Money. I went down there for an interview, and it just made sense. It just fit.
Yeah.
So I guess a month later, after the personality test, and I mean, when you work for big corporations, there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through in order to, I don't know. Have you ever worked with a corporation?
Not really, but I understand kind of what you mean. But I mean, Gibson, one of the top guitar makers in history.
Yeah.
Based in Nashville, like that's got to be a pretty high profile place to get involved with.
I guess there was like 2 computer personality tests. I don't know. Maybe they were testing other things.
I've never done anything like that.
But I would assume that it was a personality test, testing you in your honesty and
this wasn't like Scientology.
Maybe it was. They sent me a bottle of water in the mail. It was the whole thing. No, I'm just kidding. So I moved down to Nashville, and soon he didn't follow. He stayed. He had a guitar teaching business in Louisville, where he had, I think, like 35 kids.
Wow.
And his pedigree is pretty good. He's from he went to Berkeley in Boston.
That's where I went.
Graduated. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Maybe you guys know each other.
Could be.
That's wild.
I was there from 2005 to 2008.
Oh, for sure, you guys know each other.
What major was he in?
I think performance.
Okay.
Guitar performance.
I was contemporary writing and production, so I was doing like sequencing and scoring and composing and stuff.
Do you know Haim? What's Haim's last name? Shoot.
I play this game all the time. With Berkeley's such a small place.
5 people. No.
Yeah. No, but there's a good chance we're already Facebook friends or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's great. Yeah. So I moved down there and ended up, the restoration shop at the time was 9 guys. And I was the first female to go there and work as a repairer. Mm-hmm. They had a woman there who was a sander, and they had another woman before me who just was kind of goofy, didn't really know much. You know, she wasn't coming in with experience. And I think that really kind of deterred them for a while. But then they met me. And I didn't have quite as much experience, I guess, as they were looking for. One of the guys really put me through the ringer. And I don't know if I like to think that it was out of love that he always did. He always did. Always quizzing me and testing me. And that was good. It really kind of made me care more and see the responsibility that I had, because we just dealt with the artist relation stuff. So it was everybody going on tour or coming back from tour that was a Gibson artist would go through us. And so that was really cool. We worked on a lot of vintage stuff. I mean, amazing stuff. While I was there, I reconnected with a guy named Joe Glazier, who has a shop there, repair shop. Great team of guys. I think he has a team of maybe 8 repairers. He's involved in the Plek machine. I knew him through Dan. I'd met him years before, but now when I was down there, I started swinging by shop and doing that fly on the wall thing again, and asking questions and just looking, and everybody there's amazing and knowledgeable and just really welcoming for that. So he kind of put it in my head that the industry was going towards kind of this computerized way of designing. And that was something that I'd always wanted to do, is be a designer of something, right? I wanted to, growing up, I wanted to design clothing. And then I wanted to be an architect and design houses. And so he kind of introduced me to this niche that I never thought about. Me as a repairer, I just was always, I was at the other end of the problem, right? I wasn't trying to solve the problem before it happened.
There's already a problem.
There was already a problem present, right? So, and then also working at Gibson, the notorious headstock, right? The headstock brakes. And I was seeing a lot of those. And so I started thinking, should I go back to school? You know, how can I move forward towards the direction of research and development and be taken seriously as a 26-year-old female in this industry? So I did. I ended up resigning at Gibson, which was sad because I loved all of my teammates. I didn't necessarily like the culture of the company per se, but I will attest that everybody I met that worked at Gibson was passionate. Yeah. They were there not because of the paycheck, I'll tell you. They were there because they loved the history of Gibson. They loved the feel of playing Gibsons. The employees put the pride into the name. Yeah. And so when I left there, I moved back to Louisville to go to school for industrial design. Then went to school. Took about a year because most of my credits transferred. And then, let's see, after I graduated, I went back to Athens for a little while just to figure out my next move. And I worked for Dan in the mornings, from like 7 a.m. to 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And then I bartended, and I bartended until about 8 at night. And then I went home, slept, woke up, you know, wash, rinse, repeat. Yeah. So, yeah.
And how long have you been in Los Angeles?
I've been in Los Angeles now, I think, 5 or 6 years. So right after that, I got a few job offers, and managing Westwood Music's repair shop was the most intriguing to me because Suni's a guitarist, you know, he's a professional guitarist, so being in LA just kind of, you know, jived with him too. So
Westwood Music is like one of the last music shops, guitar places.
The legacy
in
stores,
LA,
yeah.
all
Fred
gone.
Wallace, yeah. And the history just intrigued me too. I mean, to be a part of that history was important to me. Unfortunately, I never really got to know Fred, but what a life, you know. He's still around. I think he repairs in Malibu. But he wasn't around so much when I was there. I had new ownership by that time. It was good. There was a lot of cleanup that I did when I first got there. The store was going through some changes, and they wanted to kind of revamp the repair shop and rebrand the store a tiny bit by still keeping a lot of the legacy behind it. After about 2.5, 3 years, I realized that there was no way for me to grow. I love the team there, the people there, but I had to resign. So when I resigned, I kind of didn't know what to do. Like, here we are in Los Angeles. It's my fault. You know, I got a few soft offers, one being in New York City. Tom Crandall, who is Adam Levy.
Oh, okay.
That was the connection with Adam. He kind of said, well, if you guys want to go to the East Coast, I'd love to have you in my shop and I'll figure something out. And boy, that would be such an honor. And I hope someday to work with him. But it just wasn't going to work out with at that point, Sonny had already kind of developed a career here. He was recording for a couple TV shows. He was touring with a few bands, you know, and just wouldn't make sense,
It's
you know.
easy to get stuck in this town.
Yeah.
You know? I've been here 10 years, and on at least 3 occasions decided I was moving and made plans and got the U-Haul and,
Oh, wow.
and still couldn't make it out. Yeah, because I had a
Get
gig.
down the
or
block, that's
I
it.
had some job that I needed to stick around for, you know. So I got stuck.
Right. It's like right when you're most ready to go, then, you know, there's a bloom of opportunity. So I opened up Guitars and Caffeine. I had all the tools.
Which is where we are now.
Yeah, which is where we are now, which is a shop in my apartment.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm not too shy about that.
Is there like a main piece of gear or a main walk me through like what's your setup if you are a guitar repairer? What tools do you need? What's the big ones?
So a good vise, a good bench vise to hold that guitar. I see so many. I walk into so many music stores and see benches built out, and all they have are these flimsy little neck cradles. That's horrible if you're going to be repairing a guitar. Mostly because you need 3 or 4 hands for a lot of repairs, and that vise is one extra one, right? So that's really, I have, I think, a $200 vise. It's been with me for 16 years now, or 15 years. And really, that's my saving grace to a lot of things. I would say tabletop tools. I have a little small tabletop bandsaw in here, and I have a belt sander. Those save a lot of time. Now, when I started Guitars and Caffeine, I didn't have all the tools I have now. Within the adventure at Westwood, we had an apartment fire.
Oh, wow.
and lost everything. This was in West Hollywood. There was just some loose wires in the wall, and it went up. We weren't there. No, nobody was hurt, but yeah. So I didn't have any tools. So I think the first thing that I made sure I had the vise, but the first thing I made sure I got was, just the basic hand tools, files and chisels. There's a lot you can do with those.
Yeah.
You know.
I had one question. I put it out. I said that I was going to be sitting down with you on social media, and I had one listener who wanted to know why. What is all the mystery, and why are people so obsessed with pre-war Martins? And like, or in general, why does it seem like the older the guitar is, the better it sounds, the better it plays, or something?
A lot of that has to do with the production line and the wood available.
Right.
Now, I am no expert with pre-war Martins. I will repeat that again. I am no.
It seems like
you're
it's
gonna have to get T.J. Thompson to edit his voice in here. Another repairer, if you don't know, look him up. T.J. Thompson he's very well known for specifically pre-war Martin restoration. Before the wars, right? America was kind of chugging along. Industrial Revolution happened. We're just being innovative at this point, chugging along. During the wars, after the wars, or during the wars, materials are scarce. There are new materials being invented, like tight bond and man-made hide glue. After the war, it's all about production and money, right? So the pre-war guitars, not only were they made from older wood that had a tighter grain, but in a sense, they were kind of made with a little bit more love.
Yeah.
Right?
Not mass-produced on a level where
we weren't there yet as an industry.
Yeah.
And, even though you have cheaper models back then, everything was still kind of handmade and handcrafted,
right.
And by artists. There was artistry involved.
Yeah. It seems like I'm just drawing this conclusion right now, but today it seems like guitar builders are kind of going the same way that like craft beer has gone, and all these industries that are now used to be like huge mass production and quality kind of went down, and now there's these smaller operations.
Yeah. Isn't that exciting?
I love it. I mean, I have a Rockbridge Dreadnought. Do you know the Rockbridge at all?
Yeah,
So it's this guy Brian Calhoun, and he's got a small team in Virginia, and they just building incredible guitars.
Yeah.
And it's like a craft beer, but it's a guitar.
It's a guitar.
It's this little 3 or 4 person operation, and they spend more time, and they make fewer products, and it's better quality essentially. Yeah. And it just seems like that was a sort of a pendulum from the idea that you can go buy a $100 guitar. It's like, well, how much work went into that guitar if it costs $100?
Right. Well, and so this is a great thing that you just brought up, because this is the new project I'm working on with Grover Jackson. So Grover Jackson Engineering is a company I just started working with a couple months ago. And we are supporting boutique builders and small manufacturers.
Cool.
For that main reason of so a lot of guitar companies take their guitars overseas because they can't keep up with production, especially if it's a small shop like 4 or 5 people. That's their only choice at this point. That drives down the price, but it also drives down the quality.
Yeah.
There's different materials used, especially with finish work, with hardware. So actually what we're doing at Grover Jackson Engineering is we're helping those small manufacturers take the next step in production without having to go overseas. So, for example, a company that's building maybe 50 to 100 guitars a year, they go to NAMM and they get an order for 250. They can't up their production that fast, but we can help them do that.
Cool.
I really think that the culture right now in the industry is extremely fascinating, wonderfully creative. the shapes that are coming out right now, they're refreshing. The aesthetics, from the finish work to the hardware. I mean, this is the rebirth that's going to be needed in order for innovation to start happening in the industry again.
Yeah. I think it's, like I was saying, I think it's happening in a lot of different areas, different industries.
You think the craft beer was like the first?
It seems like they kind of set that trend. Or coffee, right? And it's just like, I guess it's a generational thing where it's like, hey, let's take something that in the 90s and early 2000s was just like way overproduced and bring it back to like a more focused, individual, smaller operation with better results and better products.
I think the ease of marketing helps a lot with that. That cultural transition. But I think that also our generation and the generation that came right before us, there was a huge kind of creative bloom when we were children. And I think that helped us become a little bit more creative. And kind of not force that on our culture, but say, hey, you told us that we were individuals from the time we were 2, so we're not going to stop now.
I think about that all the time. Like, my parents were not told, you can do anything you want in the world. They were told, get a job and raise a family.
Get a job. Yeah.
You have duties.
It's so true.
My generation was told, you're an individual. You can be whatever you want to be.
You can be the president of the United States.
You can do whatever you want to do. You don't have to let anybody. You don't have to work a job you don't want to work.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality kind of led to a lot of entrepreneurship and a lot of, my personally, like, as a musician and with that same kind of spirit, I started a band. It was a very indie operation, and we were in charge of everything. We did everything ourselves. It was, and I guess just in general, like with social media, everybody is their own brand. It's
right.
Everybody kind of has their own image that they put out in the world, which is a very individual thing,
But that's a great point. It's technology developed right at the time where we needed it, when we were adult enough to do something with it that was practical and part of our business.
Yeah. Well, Chelsea, thank you so much for being on the show, and thanks for having me here.
Yeah, thank you.
I think we got some good stuff in here.
Excellent.
And I'm going to bring a guitar by if you have time to do a repair.
Please,
eventually.
Absolutely.
I'll bring my Rock Bridge by.
Yeah,
because I need some work.
Absolutely, and they make great stuff. So I would love to work on your guitar.
Thanks for the coffee too.
Yeah.
And where can we find Guitars and Caffeine online?
Yeah, so guitarsandcaffeine.com.
Cool.
Unfortunately, right now, my repair list is closed. Of course, you're grandfathered in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 250 clients right now, so
wow.
I think that's enough, especially with my new endeavor.
Yeah.
But I will be doing a lot more publications and a lot more videos through YouTube in the next few months, so stay tuned for that. I also have an article coming out in Fretboard Journal,
cool.
The electric issue, about Grover Jackson. So that's kind of fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening, and thanks, Chelsea. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot for listening. Make sure and leave a review on your podcast app, and follow GuitarCast on Twitter and Instagram at GuitarCastPod. More episodes and other great podcasts at guitarcast.net and osirispod.com.
Osiris.